your voice and from the summit. My voice is only now coming back to me. And Mr. Nick Sampson, how are you guys doing out there? Press 1 if you can hear me so that... Okay, cool. Great. I hope you guys are doing well today. For those of you who are new, if you have any questions to ask, we're going to try to get to all of them. Can't guarantee that we will get to all of them, but we're going to try. Just make sure you type in bracket Q like this. Bracket how do computer. If you have a question. That way we know it's a question and it doesn't get lost in the fray. So, cool? Cool. With that said, Nick, thank you for being here.
No problem. Glad to be here.
Yeah, looking forward to hanging out with you in Florida in 2 weeks for this session.
The weather will be much nicer.
Yeah, or what is it, snowed in or something?
Yeah, actually all the snow in Michigan just melted today, but there was like a solid foot last week.
I'm sorry.
It was terrible.
We actually did the summit. You were on summit in Florida, thinking it was going to be hot or something. And it was like 40 degrees the whole time.
Oh wow.
Yeah, not exactly like a tropical vacation, but it was still fun.
Yeah.
I lost the voice, and I got married at a wedding chapel. I didn't actually. So, here's the first question. Is from Connor Riedling, who I actually hung out with last week. And his question is, did you reamp the guitars, or did Polyphia? I love how the tones are bright, but not harsh.
Well, they engineer all their own guitar parts. I engineer the bass and the drums and do the key stuff, and then whatever I write, I'll record for the guitar parts. But what we did on the first record, we made a set of tones for them and their Axe-Fx's, and we spent like a week trying to get like their sound down. And so what we've been doing is using just modified versions of those tones throughout the different record cycles, mainly to just be tailored to their different guitars that they get. But yeah, those the bass tones have been Axe-Fx to the whole time, like throughout, from Muse to Renaissance and even to the new one. And we changed them a little bit. Like some of like the leads have different compression settings for different songs and stuff, but they pretty much stayed the same the whole time. I love how the tones are bright but not harsh. Yeah, there's a model in the Axe-Fx called the Corn Cob. I think it's like Corn Cob M50 or something like that. But yeah, that's a really good model if you're trying to like get after what, like all this single coil, like kind of janglier sounding tones on here, or Corn Cob. And I'm pretty sure we're some kind of Soldano model for the like soaring, like humbucker style leads. So if you're ever wondering like how to get this kind of tone, it's that's a good place to start for sure.
Besides cutting off their hands and surgically implanting them onto your own body.
Yeah, definitely. Get them fingers moving.
Yeah. So, how long have you known these guys?
What did Muse come out? Like 2013-ish? It's been years. Yes, yeah. So like since 2013, summer of 2013.
Have they always been like just massive practicers?
Oh yeah. Before every show, it's always practice routines for them. They take it pretty seriously. As far as their playing goes, they're real dudes. They're awesome guys too. They're like at my wedding and everything too. Like,
that's cool.
Really, really good friends.
Wasn't I invited, bro?
I don't think I knew you then.
Ooh,
that's back in the day.
Let's just make this Q&A awkward.
It's all right. That's how we do it.
Yeah. Awkward silence now.
Yeah.
Well, okay, next question by Robin Lejean, which is, how do you approach a drum recording for this record? What was the main intention? Did you know you were going to sample, reinforce, replace, or did you want to use as much possible of the live drums?
That's a good question. We actually did know that we wanted to reinforce the drums with samples from the get-go because we wanted to have like a real strong, consistent sound with it. And so what I did was like on even on the kick, like I only chose to use one mic this time. Usually I'll use two minimum. But what we did, I wanted to have like a dancier sound for the kick for this record for because it's like it's got that pop vibe to it on the production side of things. So I used a Beta 91 inside the kick, which is like always my go-to. And that basically I'm using that to get the clack out of it, like the mid-range punch. And then the samples I'm using more for like the low end uh, reinforcement. And I have like a one of the samples is like a cleaner pulse of low frequency, and one's like got a little bit of transient in there just to kind of blend in with the different dynamics of the kick mic and make them all kind of in the same dynamic area. But yeah, we definitely knew that we were going to sample reinforce as we tracked it. But I'm always live cymbal, live room mics kind of guy, and I use a lot of the snare bottom to make it seem like it's less sample reinforced because that's a pretty cool trick using the snare bottom to get a little more life out of the snare without it sounding too sample driven the whole time. I'll go more into depth in that in the course, but it's yeah, that's one of the tricks I use there.
You know, I just want to point something out that just because and this is not for you, this is for the students, but just because you know that you're going to sample reinforce a drum set, that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that it's like an excuse to
Yeah,
capture bad sounds or something like that. It just means you have a vision for the final product that's going to involve samples, but it's not like, oh, we're going to reinforce the samples. Let's just get whatever snare. Fuck it.
yeah, yeah. That's definitely not the case. Definitely keep the vision alive with the live drums because that's I mean everyone can program drums. Samples are available to everybody, but like recording that performance is part of making the record. So you got to make sure that you don't skimp on that in that process for sure.
All right. Glenn Helton's wondering, hey, Nick, you mentioned in the forum that you use the extra kick track as a trigger for a gate through side chaining. Can you explain how you did it?
For sure. All right, so I have the session pulled up in front of me, but what I do, I'll take like a C1 compressor gate. Actually, no, it's just the gate, C1 gate. I'll take that and put it on the track, actually the group. Like I'll group all my kicks together and send them to one uh, bus there, and then I'll put a compressor or a gate on that and activate the side chain on it, and then I'll take the kick trigger track that I have that's actually shifted 5 milliseconds in advance. So it's going to be hitting before the kick is hitting, which is good because I want the gate to start opening before the kick sound is hitting, and I want there to be a lead in time. So like I chose 5 milliseconds because that's what my attack speed is on my gate. So by the time that the kick audio is coming through, the gate's already fully opened, and then the release is determined however you want to like tune your kick to your tempo or whatever. But yeah, that's it's pretty simple. You just activate the sidechain on the gate plugin. Any gate plugin will work, and then you send in Cubase. There's a way to send via the sends tab. You can send to a sidechain, and then you adjust the level, and then basically that gate, instead of listening to the audio that it's on the track it's on, it's going to be listening to whatever you send through the sidechain, which is the trigger track that's coming 5 milliseconds in advance. So that's how I do that. And
You
the yeah, I chose the trigger track because um, triggers are contact microphones. Basically, they pick up more physical vibration, less sustained, so it's a cleaner signal. So you're not having to worry about like the gate. First of all, you don't have to worry about the gate cutting the transient off because it's opening already before, so like that's not an issue. and all the like if there is bleed in the gate, if you're trying to get ghost notes and stuff in, the triggers usually have a cleaner signal for that. So it's I never use the triggers for replacing samples or drums as much because they tend to have a wonky looking waveform because it's kind of distorted and like in the high end. But the transient's good enough to open a gate for me. So whenever I'm doing sample replacement, I'll actually use the mic track rather than the trigger track. But
Nice.
yeah,
Thank you.
Robert.
Artie Oliveira is wondering, how did you blend the synth parts of all the song with all the guitar layers? Basically, how did you mix the song?
Well, I mean, this for my priority, I would start mixing the guitar first and get that to sound how I want it to sound, and then I'd bring the synth stuff in one by one against certain sections, and then I'd start listening for clash, and you'll find a lot of that in the fundamental range of the notes. So like right around like anywhere from 300 to like 700-ish area, depending on the actual part. But you're gonna have to like go listen for that and listen to what in the keys are covering up in the guitar because I prioritize the guitar over the keys in this scenario. So and my approach would be to cut some frequency that's interfering with the guitar fundamentals there, and then all the stuff up top, like the actual distortion sound and like the pick scraping and stuff. I'll make sure that that isn't too crazy in the synth area because sometimes it can get nuts because it's like broadband noise on both of those. Like there's lots of frequency going on in every area of the spectrum. So you definitely it's a dance between getting clarity out of your guitar part and clarity out of your synth part. But in this mix, it's cool because you're not having to deal with these rhythm guitars like you usually do. Those eat up a lot of room, and the synths are a little more clean and true. So it's a lot easier than doing it that way, in my opinion. But yeah, I would approach it the way I would just prioritize the guitars first, get them how you blended, how you want to sound with like the drums and the bass and everything, and then start bringing the keys in and just slowly just listen for clash, and then bring your fader up, and then take your EQ, dip it down a little bit, and then keep bringing it up and get it to a point where you're happy with the level of the synth, and then you're good to keep moving on.
Steven Strobel's wondering, how do you prevent the bass from sounding harsh in the 1 to 2K area without losing the character and awesomeness of the slap technique?
Um, Compression, I'd say. I would so like when the slaps are hitting, there is that like sometimes you get that weird harmonic up in that area. Um, I on that section, I'm compressing. I have like a pretty slow attack time, so those thumps can come through, and then it kind of dips down. So like whatever harshness is there is only there for a split second. If it's like a really like ringy noise and you hear it like from the string, like a string harmonic, I'll go in there and notch it. But other than that, I'll use Soothe, which is a plugin that
That's a
basically
great plugin.
yeah, it's amazing. I love it. I can't wait. If no one's heard of it, I'm excited to show you guys what it does because it's like a lifesaver in my opinion. It's like a de-esser almost. It works like a de-esser, but it listens in the upper mid range for that like whistle tone. If you ever been listening to a vocalist in a recording and you hear like a random like shriek and it just like destroys your ears and you're like, oh, what is that? It's usually like a distortion resonance from compression or saturation somewhere through the recording process, or the vocalist pushed the diaphragm too hard and it resonated. So what this will do is listen for that kind of like spiky stuff and just dip it down and it's gone. It's crazy. There's a dial to adjust how much, and pretty simple plugin, but it works wonders for that kind of stuff.
I love it.
Yeah.
Robin Lady Sean is wondering,
I mean,
how did you approach? You guys know each other?
yeah, he's working on something for me.
Oh,
Dude, right.
look at you, Robin. Fucking congrats. Well, Robin is like our all-time champion, man. He's won the most the mixed competitions out of anybody, or placed the highest. Like we
Really?
back, yeah, we back everything Robin gets
Robin's the
involved with.
man. Kudos, dude.
Awesome. Good to hear. Congrats, Robbins, Lejeans. So, how did you approach the bass in the mixing stage to get it clear but not grindy?
All right, yeah. So in pretty much any time I'm mixing bass, I'll split it into at least two like parts, and that is the actual bass, the fundamental frequency, and then the character of it. So what I do is I'll split the bass track and I'll filter everything above. To start, I'll do like 250 hertz, this like maybe 300, and then I'll set a low pass filter all the way up till there, and then I will feed that into a bass amp, and that way like when the bass amp is only receiving the low frequency, so it's not listening to any of like the jangly like high frequency stuff. So there's
Like a
more.
real live bass amp in the room?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes I'll use this guy. It's like a dark glass head.
Hmm.
It works really good for that kind of stuff. And going through a cab is really cool too. When I'm at the studio, I'll always try that and see which A/B it to which one I like better between the direct of that or a plug-in or the cab. But what that does is brings in more harmonics to the actual DI sound, and it compresses it a little bit. And then I'll go with some compression just to start, and then I'll move back over to like the character side. And I'm almost always running the bass with a high pass this time around the same area. I try to put the crossover of those in a spot that I'd probably cut anyways, just in case there's any weird interference that I'm going to be cutting it. So I'll run that through like a guitar amp. Like in this case, I use Waves GTR on the bass, and so yeah, I might have that thing here. Yeah, it's just Waves GTR clean guitar setting, and then I'll dial in the sound, and that way, if you have them split up, you can work on them. You can kind of focus on the sound a lot better, and you're not you don't have all this crazy sub bass like influencing the amp's performance, and it just comes out a lot more clear. Like that's always a big thing for me. Even if it's going through a fuzz box, I'll always take out the sub bass on my grind track for sure. Just because it eats up, so it changes the sound drastically when you don't have all that stuff in there, and it's a lot more clear. And then I'll blend them back together with a group and a little bit of light compression for the glue, and then that's how I'll start.
Great. Um, Bakri Shireen is wondering, what's your typical guitar signal for recording?
Um, Typically I'll always do DI, so it'll be Countryman DI through Neve 1073 or API 3124 pre, and that'll all go into the DAW. And the way I've been doing it recently, I have the DI's recorded, and simultaneously through a send, it gets sent out of the DAW through a reamp box into whatever I'm tracking. That way, then I have a return on, say I have it hooked up to an amp.
Oh my God, bro.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, it's a cool setup. I like it. Uh, that way you can edit your DI in the DAW, and then anytime you hit spacebar, it's sending it out through your DAW into your amp, and then back through a microphone. And I'll have though I have my workflow set up, so I have one track at the top for editing DI, and then pairs. So it'll be DI summed mic signal, DI summed mic signal pairs. So I'll record a part, and then I'll work on it. If it needs a little bit of tuning or anything, I'll do that for time editing or something. Then I have all the work done to the DI. I can see it better because it's cleaner. It's just a DI. I can actually like do like things like adjusting fine tuning of it, and like a time stretch if it needs to, like one note needs to be moved a little further. And it's cleaner on the DI. And then I'll just hit record when I'm done and print it and move on.
Cool. Well, Wesley Music is wondering, what's the idea behind the role of the synths in the mix?
The role of the synths is like to fill the space that the rhythm guitars would normally fill, and we wanted to have a synthy vibe on this track particularly, more of like kind of like a 80s vibe, I guess. Like 1975-ish, kind of like atmospheric, cool sound. And so basically, they serve as a harmonic, I mean, filler, basically like this big kind of moving cloud of instruments that are just there to support
That's
the
me. I keep
guitars.
calling you.
No, that's my wife. I didn't tell her I was doing this, so she's probably blowing me up, not knowing what's going
I should call you with the questions.
on. Just call me while you're on this video stream. Okay, cool. Where was I? Let's talk about the role of the synths in the mix, huh?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, basically, we wanted those to fill a lot of the spectral space that the rhythm guitars would normally fill. Um, that's the case in a lot of Polyphia songs that don't have like the traditional kind of format where you'll record rhythm guitars and then leads over it. With this band, we kind of try to treat the guitar as the vocal, and then everything else as like what everything like the guitar would usually be. So in this case, it's bringing in all that kind of different information to the song and just making it sound epic. You know, that's the end goal. Always make it sound epic.
That's a good angle. I mean, I can get behind that, bro. So Connor Riebling's wondering, how do you go about writing with a band?
Um, basically,
Do you
well,
go writing with a band?
huh?
Do you go about writing with a band?
Yes, I do.
Cool.
We hang out at my house, and usually they'll bring their laptops and their setups for pre-pro, and we'll just sit and jam, and we'll come up with different things, and if we'll come up probably like 3 ideas a day at the beginning, and then whoever likes like we'll put them all in a pool and like pick the favorite ones, and then we'll start fleshing them out as songs a little more. And it could be anything. Like it could start as like bass guitar, it could start as like normal guitar, or even like a drum groove or something like that. And we'll just sit and flesh it out and make it to the point where it gets like a skeleton of a song, and then I'll hand it off to Tim and Scott and Clay, and then they'll do their thing on it, more so, and make it like flesh it out to where it's like 80% done, and then we'll bring it back, and then I'll kind of treat it like I would any other band, and like go through it structure wise, try to figure out the best structure for the song, make sure the top lines are good and hooky, and then just go from there.
Right. Glenn Hilton's saying the bass player's sick. How do you process the bass to help keep? How do you process the bass to help keep the slap parts balanced with the rest of the track?
um, well, the bass level is going up and down throughout the mix, so like I always try to think of a mix as scenes, and like the intro scene is obviously bass heavy. It's got lots of bass in it, so like I'll push that forward. I try to keep like the same compression settings throughout the song and kind of do my moves with automation to bring it up. If something needs to be more prevalent in a certain part, I'll reach for the volume fader first, and then just push that up. And if I notice it's like got anything wonky, I'll deal with that. But just on slap stuff, I like to use like a slower attack compression just to let that transient through to make it pump hit a little more. And then I'm always limiting at the end just to kind of bring all the peaks to the same level, because it gets crazy with slaps. Like you get one that's just like crazy going clipping your stuff and just 6 dB above the rest of them. It just all depends on how you hit it with your thumb, but it's a pretty tough thing to get down. Hopefully, I can help you guys understand a little more how I approach it in the course.
Nice. Um, Benedict Haynes wondering, do you allow the guitars and synths to take up more of the mid-range in a song like that compared to a song with vocals? Do you see the lead guitars as the voice here?
Absolutely, that that is like one of the things that I like. There's a lot of mid range in the guitar tones, especially the lead tones, which is done on purpose because there is no vocal, and you're used to hearing like out of a recording, you're used to hearing that frequency range, and it's hitting your ears in a certain way. So I kind of wanted to make sure that that was happening in the fundamental range, so the note clarity comes through a lot better. And yeah, I mean it's the difference between when you're listening to a mix with vocals and you're doing it, and then you just mute the vocals and you're like, oh, what happened? You know, it still sounds cool, but like it doesn't have like that fullness that was there previously.
Mhm.
And that's just something I try to keep with them when I mix them, is just to make sure that is the voice and that's the top line and everything. So yeah, it's definitely, you nailed it. It's like exactly the approach I'd use there, Benedict.
Darren Cox is wondering, can you talk a little bit about how you mix the snare? So rich and deep. I can't seem to get it anywhere near where you have it.
Well, what I'll do on this one, the snare top, the snare top for me, because in a lot of cases you're dealing with bleed and stuff. That's pretty crazy. So at first, I'll I'll make sure that the transient is what I'm really using out of that mic there, and then my samples I'll have like first like swish or sustain or something, or like a lower kind of pitch to blend in with it. I don't know. Let me see here. This sample. Yeah. So the sample I used is I think it's actually like a one I had before that I would just I recorded randomly one day and had I've been using in a bunch of productions, but it's it's more of a on the low frequency side, it's more sample, but on the transient side and like mid range side, it's more mic. And then the bottom, I'm always just I transient designer sustain all the way up, tack down, and then I'll blend that in, bring the attack into where it's adding just a little, um, and then I'll EQ and compress and everything from there. But I'm on this, I wasn't really trying to. I wanted to have a sound that was more clean and not like a more of a live sound. So I totally embraced the samples on this one and used the snare mic as like a it differs the character of the transient when it's hit like
Mhm.
100 times. You know, it's not like it like when you listen to a sample, it's like usually you only have like five different samples, and then they start coming through, and you hear the same five samples over the whole song. But when you have like a live snare track, it's a different sound every single time. So you hear thousands of different hits, which is something that makes it sound a little more real and lively, which is cool.
Absolutely. Johan Martin is wondering, how come the overheads were so bright in the 3 to 8K area?
Um, I don't know if it's I know like 7.5K. It's something with the room at 37 in that area. There might be like like a modal ring somewhere in the room. I'm always notching that. That's why I say that. There's like 7500 hertz is like always got this like crazy like nasty whistle ring, and that's something I deal with Soothe now. But before I would just go through and notch it all. We used a La Chapelle. I don't know what the model name of it. It's a tube preamp for the overheads, and I wanted to get a lot of like richness and added mid range from the saturation. So I saturated them on the way in, and it does like accentuate that area a little bit. You just got to deal with it and go through and bring it in with the room mics and see what part of it is adding to the sound and what part of it's making it worse, and just go from there and start EQing it out and moving it around and experimenting with it. But yeah, my overheads, I have cuts in those areas that you mentioned, like, and actually up top too. Um, it's really tough to get that harshness in general in this whole process is always like a top priority of getting rid of for me. So
Yeah,
it's got that vibe to it. It could be the cymbals too, but I mean, it is what it is. You go through, you record it as best you can, and then just deal with what it gives you. And in that case, it is a little harsh, but you just gotta smooth it out a little.
thank you. Sam Dam is wondering, do you mix through mix? Do you mix through a master bus compressor? And also, how do you approach the mastering stage?
Master, yeah, I do. At first, I don't. Like, I'll get like all my drum sounds and then the bass sound, and by the time I get the drums and bass done, I'm reaching for like a master bus compressor just to kind of give me a little glue. Not, I'm not hitting it hard. I'm not punishing it too hard. Maybe like 1 or 2 dB or something just to glue it together. And then I'll start piling other stuff on, and then I'll frequently check back and forth to my master compressor to make sure I'm not like making everything else too loud in comparison to the drums and bass where I had it set doing 1 or 2 dB.
Mhm.
So I kind of use that as a guide to make sure that I'm not pushing past the level of audio that I've already started mixing. Because sometimes you'll just get crazy and turn them guitars up way too loud. But yeah, how do I approach mastering? Is for me, I'm sure it's similar to how uh, most people approach it. I'll do compression. Actually, I'll do EQ first. I'll pull up an EQ and I'll look at what's going on. And I always kind of try to look for a like a pink noise style slope. So pink noise is like what 3 decibels per octave drop off from 20 to 20. So it's I'll look for that like a more low end and then steadily falling off. And if it's not like that, I'll uh I'll look at the if there's holes in it, I'll try to start boosting from there. And if I do notice like a big hole in the mid range or something, I'll go back in the mix and fix it rather than trying to just make my EQ move on the master because I find it's better for clarity that way, not relying on the EQ too much in the mid range for the master. Um, I'll do like a low end shelf and like a high shelf or a cut depending on what it needs. And then from there, I'll do some multi-band compression
Mhm.
and just to kind of level all the areas out a little better. Not too much though, maybe like 2 dB per band, you know, getting it just solid. And then from there, just a limiter. Lately I've been using the ozone limiter to get it. I try. That's like the last step. I don't like to think about that one too much because it's like it's a limiter. It does what it does. It gets it like to a level, and I wish it didn't have to be so loud, but in this everything's loud. You got to compete, so
Yes, you do.
you just got to smush it sometimes.
So, Rufus Amber was wondering, how do you decide what lead tracks were important to be forefront of the mix versus play a more rhythmic role in the song?
Um, it just depends on the section and what's in the section and what I think is going to pique the listener's interest the most. Um, in certain like the verses in these songs are they're like if you would picture like a verse with a vocal, like you wouldn't want to like you kind of want your vocal in your verse to be a little loud, less loud than your chorus vocal, just so when your chorus hits, it's just gonna explode. You know, it's gonna like come, it's gonna make this big like climactic thing, and that's what you're looking for is like a little contrast in between the verse and the chorus. And other, it doesn't have to be the chorus. It could be like the part in your song that you want to just like be like boom the part. So I'll definitely make sure to put chorus leads in the forefront more than verse leads. And I can do that with EQ or volume. But yeah, to answer that, that's
Cool.
really
Robin Lejean's wondering, what did you feel was the most challenging part of this song?
uh probably uh are you do you mean with the mix or is it more of like a writing like total everything in this song? Like what is the most challenging?
I don't know. He didn't specify. We can come back to him.
Okay.
See, Robin, we'll come back to you, give you time to clarify. Last question before Robin is by Banish Sarin, which is, what's your favorite contact library to play in production stage or maybe in pre-pro to help the song?
Um I like all the output stuff. I have some of that stuff. Exhale and that's like a vocal based sampler and I like that. I'm a fan of like the complete stuff too. Like I'll go in there and just like I need like a harpsichord for I actually did need a harpsichord the other day, and I was using it. I like typed in it and I was like, oh my god, there it is. Uh, yeah, but that's the complete library is really good for general all around stuff. I For like orchestral kind of stuff, I like the East West libraries and anything synth. It's either Serum or Omnisphere for me because with those two things, like you're covered for synthesis, at least in the box synthesis. Like not analog stuff's a whole nother ball game, but those two plugins will like you'll be good. Trust me.
So last question is from Glenn Helton. Nick, do you do soft panning with the guitars, or do you keep it strictly left, center, right?
Um, I always do soft panning. I mean, as far as soft panning, like I assume you mean like within the range of like 99 to
Yes.
1. Okay. I like 75 a lot. I'm a fan of that, especially because all these guitars that they do are doubled. They like to double them with octaves. So I'll
Hmm.
put the lower one on the left to keep the kind of piano pan vibe throughout everything. So the low frequencies are on the left, higher frequencies on the right. And it's yeah, I definitely do. I'll do 50-50, especially for vocal harmonies and stuff. When I do have that 50-50 there, um, 75-75, and then 100-100. I kind of stick to those, and then if I feel like it needs to be a little more wide, I'll move it over. But it's I pretty much get everything I need out of those like stages in panning.
Makes sense. I think that's a good way to go. Well, Nick, thank you so much for doing the Q&A with us. Really, really looking forward to going way deeper on this stuff in your actual Nail the Mix session.
For
And
sure.
thanks to all of you guys who showed up to hang out with us this Tuesday afternoon. Goodbye, people.
Later, guys.